stronger, and they're looking for a different mode of expression or a different way of being. So they're reorienting. So in
Yeah.
that sense, an awakening doesn't become just some mystical thing that's somewhere floating on out there. It becomes a very embodied experience.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
that's where spiritual shifts really was like, you know what, I want to go into it. Let's go into it. Let's go
Yeah.
into these things, you know? Like, yes, this is reality, but what's happening now with all this? What is it doing? And it does seem to reorient, or at least in this case it did.
I would say it's definitely rewarding, and that's just the physics of it. You know, we come in as children, right? We have this wide view of everything, and then as we condense to adulthood, we come into this sort of hourglass to the present moment where we are now, which is just full of detail. But we can kind of see that we're moving into this place of just letting go of all of that, and right
Yeah.
back to the innocence
Yeah.
of just allowing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And how scary is that if we've built our whole lives around not knowing, right?
yeah, totally. Our whole identity is wrapped up in it. Yeah, definitely. And that creates quite a conundrum of, what do you work on and what don't you work on? Like how much of the shadow do you address and how much do you just observe, you
And
know?
what I've found, and I'll speak to that just for a moment, what I've found is that it kind of does itself. It's really just about that interruption, stepping out of the way and allowing these, because life becomes our teacher. These things that seem to be obstructions or obstacles on the path to our spirituality actually become our greatest gifts and our greatest sources of awakening. So when that deep recognition comes, that no longer will I run from myself in all these different forms and all these different expressions, what happens then when I
Yeah.
stop running and I'm actually here as I've always been? But remember, this time we're actually here. We're not trying to check out, although some people really are using non-duality to check out still. And that's a phase, I think, and that lasts for X amount of time. And I think it passes because that gets boring, because life wants to be life. Life
Yeah.
wants to live itself. Right. So this deep love, this deep freedom that gets recognized, it's really looking to embrace and include everything. It's a very inclusive energy. So um so everything that comes in that sense, and I say this all the time, it takes on a new texture and a new vibrancy and a new aliveness. And yes, it can still be disgusting and painful and messy and awful, and we could still be horrified at our very limited human nature, right? But there's something there, and this is really the key difference. Now there's something there that's open to that in a new way, and not in the sense that I love myself, or I'm going to love and embrace myself. It's more of just like a curiosity, I think, of like, okay, well, what is this? What's really here? And so these lost parts of ourselves, when they do end up coming back home, because this is what this is really all about, is coming back home. um w- More and more of this freedom that we are becomes embodied, becomes actually physically tangible in the way
Yeah.
that we approach life. And it's not like, and many times it's not things you can see or things you can know, it's like the knowing comes after. The freedom's first, and then there may be the thought, oh, well, I reacted quite differently in that situation than I normally would have.
Yeah.
So something has shifted.
Yeah. I would say the authenticity is that, and by the way, I'm
Yeah.
recording because you were on fire. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to start recording. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
but
The
yeah,
authenticity. Yeah, that's right.
yeah, that totally was it for me too, because and as you say, it's an ineffable quality that the fire is being authentic. And my whole life, and I say my life in quotations, of of a music business, I was chasing this admiration, I was chasing approval, I was chasing really love, really the abandoned love that I didn't get as a child through these
Sure.
superficial interactions. But when I started to become my authentic self and not care about any of that shit, suddenly there was just this glow, and everybody was magnified to me. It was as easy as breathing. It was just effortless, and
Yeah.
and there was no pretense to anything. It was just, I just did what I want, said what I want, and there was such immense freedom in that, and nothing changed on the outside. It was all here.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And everywhere. And that's really the key thing, is that when the shift happens, that's when that unity is recognized, that we are really actually are deeply connected to everything around us.
Yeah.
Everything around us. And even there's this story that I really love. I don't know if I can tell it right, but there was this story of this village. I gotta tell it. I'm
No,
sometimes I get
tell
into
it.
stories,
I
but
love it.
it was this story of this village, and they were going through an awful drought. None of the crops were growing, and the people were really like, "Where the hell's the rain?" And so they called this rainmaker from up in the Himalayas, this Taoist rainmaker, and they were like, "Please come to our village. We really are in big trouble here. We need this rain." And the guy comes down, he goes inside one of the little huts, he locks himself up for 3 days, and then he comes out, and everybody's like, "Oh gosh, the rain's coming, the rain came, and these beautiful rivers start to fill up, and the crops are growing, and everything's flourishing again." And the guy's on his way out, and they're like, "What did you do? How did you do this? What did you do?" And he goes, "When I came into this village, there was such chaos here. The energy was just so chaotic that all it took was one point of balance, and he was that point of balance. So he came into this village, and just by his presence of balance, all that chaos also
Wow.
came into that resonance and into that harmony. So that's really what we're talking about. Like, we because if you're looking out at the world right now from a relative standpoint, it's disturbing. And it's a
Yes.
good thing. It's a good thing, because when things are seen and when they're looked at and when they're examined from a conscious standpoint, they change.
Yeah.
So let us look, let us not close our eyes. Let us pay attention, especially if we're awake.
Yeah. Yeah. We're
Right?
seeing a magnified version of the thing that we're missing about ourselves that needs to be tweaked and
Yeah,
balanced.
100%.
Right.
A hundred
It's like,
percent.
here it is, super loud. Did you get it? No. And then if you didn't get it that time, then the
Uh-huh.
next time it's going to be twice as loud, until
Yeah.
you learn to fix that,
Yeah.
heal that thing into love, really,
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily love, because there's definitely that meekness, that harsh of,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't even know how to solve that problem. I won't say it's a problem, but of
Mm-hmm.
non-duality. It's finding that balance between, there is this boundary, but there
Mm-hmm.
is no boundary at the same time.
Yeah, that resolves itself. That really resolves itself, because we end up with a lot of mental ideas of these things, and they really happen automatically, and they're inherent to who we are, this balance. Just by being who we are, they're just the result of that. So I think one thing I do want to say is the more mental we get about any of this stuff, the more we lose sight of what's actually happening, because these are energetic things. And even if you're studying things like psychology or the mind, which I study it pretty heavily because I think it's fascinating.
Like,
But
likewise. Yeah.
yeah, but basically, and energy comes in energy, but then it comes in images. It comes in images. So our energy's thinking itself up in images, right? And those thought patterns come on top of that. And so it's almost like we have to take the little baby steps back, or the breadcrumbs back, going back to the origin of just pure primal feelings, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then from that space, we can see what images are there, what words are there, what's actually here, right? And include all of that. But when we get in that mental thing, and you can hear it, you can hear in the pitch of people's voices if they're mental and too far removed.
Yeah.
Because I guess that's what I really mean, is we're just so many steps removed
Yeah.
um, from what's
That's
happening, right? We're
yeah.
way out there on some lonesome island in our own little world. So
Some
let's,
people are just a few steps away. Some people are thousands of steps away,
yeah,
and then we look at each other and go, no, that you're going the wrong way. Well, how do you know there's the wrong way? Maybe they have a shortcut.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we get
No,
into the
there's,
problem of other and,
yeah,
and what balances other, you know.
there's no mistakes that could ever happen here. This could never go wrong. It could never go wrong. But it can be extraordinarily uncomfortable and dysfunctional, and that has to be recognized.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a rude awakening for me. I think Joseph Campbell calls it the great humbling. When he
Hmm.
first started waking up, he called it the great humbling.
Yeah.
So for me, it came on very fast. I wasn't saying I wasn't a seeker. I've always been a seeker since I was a little kid, but psychedelics kind of definitely threw me in the deep end, and I was like, "Holy moly, what is going on here? This needs to be looked at carefully, and everything else has to stop." And and I think not going in gradually um, caused a huge amount of turmoil because suddenly I was forced to face gigantic things at once,
Hmm.
which would have been probably a little bit easier if I had just grazed into the water a little bit.
Yeah, that's the beginning of every great awakening.
Yeah,
I don't think we can ever be prepared for that kind of. I think a lot of people can also really relate to that
yeah,
because it's never what we think it will be. Our thoughts like to keep things pretty safe, and when they expand and all that energy beneath there comes out, I don't think anybody's ever prepared for that. I mean, the liminal self's not prepared for that. Who you are wants that all the way.
yeah. It's inevitable. Yeah,
Yeah, especially if you're asking the right questions,
yeah,
right? Some of us are asking, I mean, some pretty existential questions, like who am I?
yeah.
Who
The
are
deepest
you?
question.
Yeah, the deepest questions. I mean, what is God?
Yeah,
That's serious business. If your spiritual search is going down that path, and the inquiry is that deep, that's a deep calling. That'll turn your life upside down.
oh, for sure, for sure. Those questions I've always asked, always
Yeah.
asked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's almost like the universe went, "Oh, you want to know? Well, here you go.
Uh-huh.
Here's a couple of capsules.
Totally.
Now you
Yeah.
know." And I was like, "What?"
Be careful what you ask for, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure. So was your awakening like this very sudden shift, or was it a gradual process for you, Kate?
what I think what I think happens is that aha moment is always a blockbuster moment. But for most of us, that ends up having to integrate into day-to-day life. So that ends up having to become like functional. So so for me, there was a reorientation. There wasn't at that point. There's no sense of I need to get back there.
Mm,
There's a deep recognition there that there is no there, right?
yeah.
And that here is all there is. So
So that
there's
was
no,
sudden. That was a sudden shift. That
who it was, and I want to put it up on your podcast, Ford, because I really liked this guy. His name was Wayne Wires, or Wirs. I never know how to say his last name, but he had a video up on his like YouTube or whatever, and it just randomly came up on like one night up on the YouTube, and he had said something along the lines of like it was called How I Woke to Enlightenment. That was the title of the video. And I never even cared about enlightenment, although I was in heavy spirituality, but I was on the end of like all the like candy store type things,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
The channelings and the tarot and all that goodies, like yoga powers and all that. And then I was like, enlightenment, like that's an interesting word. Like, I don't know, for some reason that just wasn't my thing, although I did have
Mhm.
an immensely deep relationship with what I thought was God at the time, except it was a sad relationship because I was like, why are you somewhere else? Why don't I know you? Where
Yeah.
are you? And this video came up and he said something along the lines of like, um, that he was in Oregon somewhere, and he lived out of his van, and he was a photographer, and he just kind of blogged these stories online and made little YouTube clips. And he was meditating out in near Mount Hood or somewhere, and this little frog came up, and he was like, I'm not leaving until this froggy leaves. Like, I'm just going to keep meditating here until the froggy leaves. And it was like 4 hours into it, and he was like going nuts, is what he says in the video. And then he realized it was like a very simple recognition that the reason that this froggy could sit there for 4 hours without going crazy was because the frog wasn't sitting there thinking. It wasn't thinking. And so that night, I couldn't shake that for some reason. And again, I'd read Eckhart Tolle. I've gone through the whole, like, you are not your thoughts school. Like, I've been there, done that. And I had slight insomnia at the time. And I remember, waking up to pee, and I was like, damn it, here we go again. Now I'm going to be up for another 2 hours. And then that video came up in the middle of the night, and in my, wherever. And I thought, oh, wait, okay, we can stop the thoughts. They can just stop. Because if the frog can stop its thoughts, like, we can stop our thoughts. And then it just got really quiet all of a sudden, like really, really quiet. And I went to bed, no problem. Woke up in the morning, it was still really quiet. And then another day passed, and it was still really fucking quiet. And it just went on and on, to the point where I was like, oh my God, do people know this? Like, is this normal? Like, do people know that this can happen? Like, this is crazy. Like, this can all just stop. And at that point, I was just hanging out in like river beds and lagoons and trees, because I was like, I don't even want to go back. Like, I just want to be here. Like, what's going on? Like, what is this? And then there was this, just deep recognition that was actually reality, that this whole time, my whole life, I'd never been in reality. I was never even actually, it was like I was some fake thing, functioning on this fake premise, and it wasn't me.
Yeah.
And I never came back from that.
Wow.
I don't think, like, and I think Adyashanti says something like that, no matter how little that scene is, or that recognition, no matter how small it is, it will never leave you. A deep, true recognition of who you are will never leave you.
It'll never leave you. It almost kind of like scars you. I don't want to say scar, because scar sounds bad, but it's just like,
oh, it's over. It's game over.
Game over. You're not coming back from that. No. It's hard to take anything for real anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can have huge problems with that as well, right?
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Some more than others. Yours is really, really gentle. Mine was a little bit more. I had been waking up for a while, but I had never heard of enlightenment. I had never heard of Eckhart Tolle. I was not a meditator. I thought the yin yang was an OP symbol. Like, I swear to God, I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought that was like the logo for OP.
What's OP?
So, like, they're like a surfing brand, I didn't even know it had anything more to do with than that. But I was into quantum mechanics big time. I was really, really into learning that stuff. And then I overdosed on basically peyote, and boy, did it show me. I thought I was dead. It was dead, and I screamed out for. I was an atheist at the time. I'm like screaming for God, like, please, somebody come, and nobody came. And I was like, oh my God, no one's coming. Like, no one's ever going to come, because this is it. That this is the whole thing's been this great big facade, And I remember just walking around in this zombie kind of a place for days, and each day I'd wake up, I'd be like, I'm not even alive. I mean, this is not even a real thing. I can't even prove that I woke up this morning. How do I know I just didn't go from one dream to the next dream?
Yeah.
Like that's how indistinguishable reality becomes from dreams from that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And I never came back, you know.
Yeah.
You know? And that
Yeah.
sounds like I lost my mind on psychedelics, but it's full gaining the mind. It's so absolutely beautiful and horrific too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely an inclined interest right now in plant medicine, especially from therapeutic standpoints. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that um, uh, that the nature of these plants is is unitarian. Like it's a unitarian nature. Like it's almost like they have their own wisdom to give. They have their own kind of um, medicine to give. And yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people that are taking it for depression, for example, they're realizing, and I guess this is what I mean, they're recognizing that the depression isn't, it's not their depression, it's actually in the whole of society, and these plants are showing us a way out of it.
Yeah. It's kind of like this collective depression that it's showing up as a
Yeah.
as a personal depression, you know.
That's
I,
right.
yeah, I can't be so noble as to say I was taking it for as a medicine back in the day. I was, just being a rock star, just thought, oh, okay, here's the next cool thing I'll do,
Yeah.
But I was always a seeker, but boy, from that moment on, that was definitely a change. I had tripped hundreds of times up until that point, but that was the game changer. And and it's like it's so easy from now. Like I can get sucked into some. Oh my goodness! Wait, I bet you anything they're selling me an extension on my car insurance.
Yeah.
What do you think? I bet you any amount of money. That's what that was.
Or it's a business loan.
Yeah, or a business loan. We want to help you with your business. Here's $900 to change your life. Anyway. So I bring all that up because a lot of the people who find me aren't necessarily seeking. They find me through the music or whatever, or they're ravers. Maybe they had some crazy acid experience. And then suddenly there's someone they know going, "Oh no, you're not crazy. That's like legit stuff."
Yeah.
So I feel like in a way I'm kind of preaching to a different audience than that most people, that wouldn't even dream of texting in non-duality or satsang.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of fun for me, to be able to, I don't know, be the one to go, whoa, check this out. You think you're high now? Watch this,
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait,
No,
do you
that's
make your life high. Wow. That's,
yeah. Well, music is such a big part of how we lose ourselves, right? And
yeah.
how we disappear. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, absolutely. My dedication now is music as a healing modality. So
Beautiful.
this is like my side channel. My normal channel is more about, music, bringing people into toroidal balance, which is really what
Oh,
non-duality is about.
beautiful.
Bringing
Yeah,
bringing you
truly.
right to that dipole. Like how can I mathematically bring you right to that dipole? You know,
Hmm.
that's my nerd talk.
I like that. No, I really like that because it really brings in the elements of this being, bringing it back to the body, bringing it back to a physical experience. And it's so out there, these things we're talking about, for the people that haven't had necessarily quote unquote a spiritual experience. But what we're really talking about isn't doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to show up like that, right? It doesn't have to be some big aha moment. Ultimately all we're looking for is our own disappearance, is the end of believing that we are this thought, these thoughts, because that's all that seeking is, right?
Yeah.
It's just these thought patterns. And so what happens when that stops? What happens when our thoughts stop? We're actually really here truly for the first time.
Yeah.
And so it's okay if they come back. It's okay. A lot of people, they think, oh, like that piece went away or that moment went away, and now I'm filled with seeking patterns again. Yes, but you're awake now.
Yeah.
But you can see them now, right? Now
Yeah.
you know what's happening.
Yeah.
Right now there's a different dimension to this. So what are you going to do with that? Most of us are going to freak out and run the other way, because this isn't a functional realization. If it doesn't become embodied, and if we don't learn, well, not even learn, if we don't allow this expression to permeate our life, okay, and to actually come out into our world, um, we end up wavering back and forth between dualistic and non-dualistic perceptions. So it's kind of like, what I'm saying is, it wants all of you. It doesn't just want the part of you that wants the big aha moment, or
Yeah.
the part of you that really wants the goodies that are there, because there is a lot of pleasure in reality and in truth, and it's very healing, right? But that's not what this is about. And if that's what you're looking for, it's going to take you a very long time to relax and to finally let go.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people think that meditation is about, oh, let me just stop thinking for 5 minutes. A, good luck with that. And B, first you have to bring your life into meditation. It's not just
Yeah.
about having a crazy life and then, okay, I'm going to put the kids away. I'm going to, and I'm going to sit for 5 minutes and I'm not going to watch TV and I'm going to just, smoke a blunt and or drink my wine. And, that's
Right.
meditation for most people, which is
Right.
not at all it. You gotta learn to be like, push it all away. I go hours sometimes. My phone is not even in the same room. It's
Yeah.
off and away, and I'm definitely not a slave to my device. My electronic devices. It drives my friends crazy, which is why I have so few of
Yeah,
them.
it's very difficult to find that space and that Zen peace. And what I've noticed is, the more we look for it, the more elusive it becomes. Like, the more we try and manhandle this peace from the outside, the more temporal it is, and the more almost like feverish we get in our attempts to try and get it. So
Yeah,
I
it,
think,
it's 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 very fascinating. Go ahead. What were you saying? You think what?
well, I guess really, for me, what had to happen is that there had to really be an allowing of everything in, because I was very similar, Ford, to you, where, especially as someone who's quite, sensitive or whatnot, the tendency was to push things away, like, don't touch this, don't touch this, like, let me just be, because I love this so much, like, don't come into it, right?
Yeah,
And then when we stop doing that, because that's obviously impossible and it's painful and it's very hard, right? Because life's going to be life. And then when we open those gates up and we say, okay, fine, come in, come in, just come in. And first it feels like it's destroying you and eating you alive, and you can't even take it, right? Your worst fears are coming true. The thing you thought you were is being taken from you. This peace that you thought you were, this love that you thought you were, it's being taken from you. What you realize is that it actually isn't being taken from you. It's not being, and nothing can actually affect it and impact it. We have to go back into life, and we have to let life touch us in order to recognize that. And that's the thing. Most people, and especially me, I mean, I moved out of the city 6 years ago for this exact reason that we're talking about. I thought, oh, well, doesn't make sense. I mean, in the relative standpoint, in the larger scheme of things, it was just the progression of whatever was doing its thing. But um, yeah,
yeah. So you kind of just I do the same thing. I push. I definitely live a hermit's life. The further I've kind of gone down this rabbit hole, the further I push people away. My circle's just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and I'm not so sure that's really a healthy way of being. Sometimes.
well, it's just what has to happen for this particular part of the process. It
Yeah.
has to happen like that. It could be no other way. And that
Hmm.
could change, it could not change. I notice the same thing. There are certain people that come into my space that, X amount of time ago, it was just normal for me. And now it's just like, ooh, wait, that's not that normal. Like, that's not really gonna work anymore, you know? And it's just it's just a different vibration, a different frequencies developing here, and it's permeating your world.
Yeah, people sometimes like you can be your friends forever, but if they're not growing with you, or maybe they're just not having this experience, they're just going to vibrate out of your life. They've served their
Yeah,
purpose, you know,
absolutely. Yeah.
which is weird because you start to think that it's you. You know, it is you, but it's not a bad thing. It's a you growing thing. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Uh, let's talk a little bit about resistance. I watched a
Mhm.
bunch of your videos today, and I just you got into the path of no resistance and the
Yeah.
importance of abiding to that. So I know it's hard for you to be like, oh, let me just pull that up out of my.
No, no, it's this is the heart of the discussion. I
Yeah,
mean, this is the heart of what we're talking about. So, what is it here that's resisting? What is that? We have to look at that. We can't ignore that. Like, we can't just think that something underneath that resistance abides.
yeah,
Something underneath this energy, this panic, this frustration, this feeling of don't encroach on my peace, this discomfort. Something's already there with that inherently. In the resistance, there's already something that's not, like, for example, how could something already be here without, how could something already be here? Like, your resistance comes after the fact, that's already, like, the pain that's here, for example, it's already here, and then the resistance comes after that, right?
yeah,
Or the argument or the conflict or the things that give us discomfort that we would just most naturally resist, right? like there's something there that's in harmony with that, that's okay with that, and then the resistance is secondary. So if we don't meet ourselves in that resistance, and because the resistance is basically the resistance. So the thing that doesn't want what's happening is the problem, not the pain, not the fact that my leg's getting chopped off and someone just, like, you know, set the building on fire. Like, that's not actually the problem,
the
right?
problem is the fear of it,
Yeah. Well,
panic.
the problem is my resistance to it. But then the bigger problem is my resistance to that resistance.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
chew on that for a while,
yeah.
right? So when
So
we
I was gonna say a brilliant thing that I'm not a huge fan of Sadhguru, but he did say something that was well worth the whole retreat. He said the only power we really have is the ability to respond.
Mhm.
We can react or we can respond.
Yeah,
And it goes back
exactly.
to what you're saying, just noticing the resistance. And then behind
Exactly.
that resistance is another resistance to that resistance. And it just
Yeah.
keeps going and going and going.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're kind of like tests, aren't they? These resistance. It's like it's a test of our integrity. I'm not really sure of integrity of what, but integrity of something. It seems like.
The volume gets higher,
Yeah.
the volume of that resistance, it's going to get much higher in on the path that we're discussing here. It gets much higher than just regular people who have found coping mechanisms or who have found effective seeking patterns to deal with their resistance. So
Yeah.
when you're when you're looking at reality from a non-dualistic perspective, the volume's higher. Okay, the ante's higher. So in that sense, we can't look away anymore, even though
Yeah.
we'd want to. And in the past, we were pretty good at it. Now it doesn't seem to be possible to look away anymore. And so that's where we get into this unification, or this deep inner love affair with these awful, awful things, where and you can call it an embrace, because I think that's the most wonderful word for these things, is that who you, that which you are, that which does abide, that which has been recognized um, as the non temporal, all permeating reality, that's always there, that's never going to leave. So it kind of makes room and it makes space for all these things all of a sudden. And I think also that yeah, it can be a very good test. It can be a wonderful test because we can allow that in, and we can allow it to destroy us, okay, in
Mhm.
the relative sense. But really what it's doing is it's coming back home after that um destruction, and after that collapse, and after that composting of all these emotional episodes, because these things can get very, very emotional. When I say the volume's high, I mean these things can be very frightening and very emotional when we start to let life in at a conscious level. They're
Yeah.
heavy, they're intense. We don't always have the skills to deal with these things, but that which abides does. That which abides does. And when it allows these things in, because at this point you have no choice whether or not you want them to get in. They're going to keep coming in the back door. You can close your windows, you can lock the door. They're going to find a way in.
Definitely. Yeah, it's like the it's a refinement of the test. It's almost like alchemy of the soul, sort of like, like
Yeah, totally.
there's whole truth to the chakra system, because when I first started waking up, the problems I was dealing with were very security based. Here I was, a successful musician, and still, money. I was freaking out about money, and then the economy crashed. There's all these like things that I thought I was never going to have to deal with that I suddenly had to deal with. And then it became more about personal sovereignty and boundaries. And I was married at the time and trying to figure out, like, okay, well, this isn't working for me because I have boundaries. And then as I moved into more of the heart, it's kind of becoming more about integrating this, not necessarily love of other, but learning how to love me and all of my little idiosyncrasies. So it's
Embrace.
interesting. Yeah, embrace, embrace. Yeah, it's quite funny. But each time there's a new level, it's like you're saying, the universe makes space. So all the crap that was left bothering you at level 1 is now taken care of. And then all the stuff that was
Sure.
leveling 2 is now taken care of. So it's like
Yeah.
where I'm at now, I'm dealing with, like, I my linear time body life has had an experience of gender dysphoria my whole life, and it's really probably the reason I'm a musician, because I was just so afraid of people, and I'm like, I'm a freak. So that's, my life has always just been about music. But here I am in my 50s, suddenly trying to confront this. And it's interesting to do that through a non-dual perspective, because I don't necessarily believe in identity. But here it is, the shadow's there. I've got to deal with it. I know
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with identity, but nonetheless, there's a dysphoria thing happening there. There's this distaste for my body, and I've got to figure out what that is. And that is kind of like where I'm at now, which is just this very bizarre, uber complicated way to. It's such a complicated problem that I can't share it with anybody who could possibly
Yeah.
relate. Not even other transgender people, because they're like, oh, you're just a woman. You're what? No, I'm not any of that stuff. I'm transcendent beyond that. But nonetheless, there's this tornado inside of me that is
Right.
just super, super not jiving here.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of contrast is very similar. Like especially when one part of the consciousness will go so drastically to one side, it will try and compensate by creating this other kind of complementary energy to itself. So if you have something that's completely disidentifying from the body or attempting to disidentify, you're going to have a polarity with that. And
Ah,
so obviously that causes friction, and it causes kind of like a pressure in the system, right?
yeah,
Where these
yeah.
two forces, it's almost like they're pulling against one another. And so what I found with these things is because they can express and manifest in different ways. Like there are all kinds of different ways that this loss of identity can affect the psychology of the person. And typically, if it's doing something the thing is, we might think, oh, this is weird, this is wrong, but if it's doing something, like there's a highly intelligent uh energy that's balancing the system, right? And when we allow these things to iron themselves out, it's kind of like, I forget who said this, but it was like there's no real solutions to a problem ever. Like there's actually no solutions to a problem. But what can happen is we outgrow problems, or the problems like kind of like we move out of the problems. Like you don't ever actually solve the problem, but you can move out from the problem. But the only way that really happens is, first of all, mysterious and unknowable. Okay, so there's no real direct solution as to when we can resolve some of these psychological um, imbalances. But what we can do is we can allow them a space to reharmonize and reintegrate in whatever way that they deem most suitable for that unique particular body or the unique particular expression. Because what will happen is, if you find yourself in a space of being able to hold both, um, they will have less friction. Because if you
Yeah.
have one part of four going deeply into the non-identity part, you're causing friction. So
Yeah.
this part's going to get even more active, right? And
Yeah.
so, and I have, I have been with people who deal with this quite frequently. You're not alone in this. There are other people who deal with this, and it's kind of like, we can't not look away from it, right?
Yeah.
Because it keeps pulling our energy, it keeps pulling our attention. It's like, I'm here, I want you to be here with me, I want you to accept me, I want you to acknowledge me, and I want you to embrace me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I tell people
yeah,
before that it's like to describe it, it's like having a rock in your shoe your whole life. Like no matter how amazing the experience, there's this rock in your shoe, and it colors every experience of your life. And to be authentic about it is simply just to take the shoe off and be like, I know I'm barefoot. Oh well, I'm barefoot. I'm sorry. At least
yeah,
that rock's not in there bothering me anymore.
yeah, yeah,
And then just trying to find this weird balance that just seems to be first making me happy here, and then whatever other people feel about it, that's
right,
on them. That's on them.
right,
I'll just make music and just be a goofball my whole life. It's fine.
yeah,
Yeah. So there's this other thing that you said. I'm going to quote you something, and you're going to be like, oh gosh. That really, really blew me away, because I'm a huge fan of anything that is succinct, because that's power, that's depth, and foundational. And you said this. You said a dual experience is an experience that happens to me, and a
mm-hmm,
non-dual experience is an experience that happens, which sees that I am the experience.
mm-hmm,
So one is the outside looking in, which gives the outside the power, and the other
mm-hmm,
is the inside looking out, which gives the inside the power. And
mm-hmm,
I was like, that couldn't have been phrased any better. Really,
mm-hmm.
really deep there, deep there. And I guess what you're getting at is that it's a broader identification with the moment itself. You're no longer identified with the body, but you're more identified with the entirety of everything that's unfolding, and just
Yeah, I
allowing it.
mean, the me only takes the me can only go so far. The me can really only go so far before it's recognized that it's not really getting you anywhere. It's not really getting anywhere. It doesn't really, it seems like it's getting somewhere, and it's going to fix one thing on the outside, but it fixes that one thing, and then another thing comes in. And
Yeah.
it really just is, it lives in the stream and in this illusion that it's really gonna have the solution one day to that pebble in the shoe, and that pebble in the shoe is really gonna go away. And so it's constantly in its own fictitious little world, planning and scheming how this little pebble's gonna leave, and how I'm gonna get it out. And again, you can just sense the exhaustion behind that. You can sense the
Yeah,
exhaustion behind that, because that's what ultimately creates the pebble in the freaking first place, right?
it's true.
And so when that's recognized, and when kind of the futility of these patterns is seen, and this for me has been progressive, it's been, when life kind of forces you to look and to open your eyes and to sit here and to see the parts of you that are like rotten. um yes, in one sense it puts the ball in a totally different court, because now there's something that's abiding, and now there's something that's willing to be here, and it's always willing to be here because it's your true nature. So it's not that it's me being here, there's just the recognition that that which is here already has embraced these dualistic aspects or perceptions. But again, um when we recognize that dualistic reality can only get us so far, and that it's exhausting, and that it's not really sustainable. Okay, look at our planet. Is this sustainable?
No. Yeah.
So when that's deeply, deeply, like intrinsically recognized, then there's a letting go. Something lets go at a integral level. Something just lets go. And then what that letting go looks like is an embrace. It's an embrace of everything.
Yeah.
It lets go.
Yeah.
It's
And
not.
complete allowance too of what is.
Yeah.
Letting go of control and just allowing. It is just is. That's fine.
But it's not you that allows it, though. It's not that Kate's a more harmonious person that's more tolerant of
Mhm.
others and knows how to surrender, and she's learned those skills. It's not
Mhm.
really that. Kate could still very well be arising and doing dysfunctional things, right?
Mhm.
But there's something that's not in conflict with her anymore. There's
Yeah.
something that's not sitting there telling her, you're a bad girl, go away. This
Yeah.
is wrong. Although those thoughts could still be on the periphery, but they're not actual. The identity with that figure. It's almost like it's almost like I don't know. It's like the love of the mother. Like, it's just looking at this little child, like, and it could be pooping its diaper and screaming and throwing a tantrum and being this ridiculous little thing, but what's that mother gonna do? Like, it's just gonna hold her child.
Yeah. That's all she can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gosh, I was going to say something there and I lost my train of thought. Um, but yeah, it's not like you said. It's not the person. It's allowing. It's just allowance happens.
That's
There's,
right.
yeah, the identity is not even on a. It's not even there anymore.
Well said.
Uh,
I like how you put that. That's very, very good. I love that.
it's kind of like watching the watcher watch, but not being anything. It's being the whole watching the watcher experience the all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's a very vulnerable place to be for the person, because there's a total radical loss of control here.
total,
You
total.
can be abandoned. You can be rejected. You could perish. You could lose everything.
Sure.
And you could also not, you
Yeah.
could also not.
I think that's I think to me that is the difference between taking the shallow way in and addressing things
Mhm.
foundationally and moving
Mhm.
up versus
Mhm.
just jumping in. Like you could take a bunch of acid and just be like, oh, nothing's real. I don't have to work because there is no job and it's all a dream. But that is going to crash on you so hard because you
It
still
could.
got these latent beliefs that are going to be nagging you,
Exactly. That's
creating all of
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was really, again, the turning point for spiritual shifts, when it's like there's so much to not non-duality coming out, but then there was just somehow it wasn't integrating. It was like, okay, but I can't be holed off in this little world here by myself, and not integrated. And there was this deep fear. It's like we were talking for, like, this fear of somebody taking that piece or somebody coming into that. right? But it's not until we take our awakening out into the world that it could move. And that's where that mystical element comes in, you know, of um of the embodied awakening, or as
Yes.
Adyashanti says, emptiness dancing.
Yes. Yes. That's for sure the thing to take away. Like the more that you are trusting and willing to let go, the more it's going to breathe for you. You know, like that's the fear. The fear is if I let go, my whole life's going to crash. Like you have to let go, but you have to let go in small pieces and build that faith. And that faith just gets a little bit
Yeah.
bigger. The more you trust it, the more you can let go, and the more it just takes over for you. Until you, before you get to a point where I feel like I am now, I just wake up and my life is the same every day. It's just whatever I feel like. Maybe I walk, maybe I play with my dog, maybe I make music. You know, it's then I go to bed and I do it all over again.
And that's terrifying for most people. That's actually terrifying. Like what you're talking about is a very simple, ordinary existence. And people are petrified of that.
Yeah, they like the order. They
Mm-hmm.
want to know that the weekend comes, I watch football, and
They
then
want control. People want
yeah,
control.
they
Yeah.
want order.
Or
Yeah,
that energy, that seeking pattern wants control. And it's always going to lose control because it doesn't actually have that. That's why it wants it so bad, because it's something it knows it can't have.
yeah, yeah. And I would guess that would be the difference between, I guess, if you want to get bring AI into it, the NPC versus the actual character in the game. I guess you know the ones that are just playing their roles and kind of stuck in that program loop. That's to be caught in the matrix, I guess, of it. And then the one that goes, wait a minute, just this loop is something isn't making sense about it. And you
Yeah.
start to work on
Yes.
getting yourself out of that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So in that sense, I like when non-duality is discussed in this manner. I really do. I really love it, because I see a pervading uh, theme in a lot of these communities where there's just massive disassociation going on, and these patterns eventually resolve themselves. They really do. So it's okay if that's happening. I'm not saying that that's wrong or there's something wrong with it. It's just a phase in the process that I guess makes sense at the time. um when the volume is so loud and there's so much noise, then it's a huge relief when that can just be shut down. You know, when I can put a bunch of um neo advaita on and just shut that off and push everything away. And and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's very healthy and very good and very beautiful when we could just be, you know, and just start to discover, perhaps for the very first time, that that can actually happen. um but when we're talking about um when we're talking about who you are, we're talking about it in the broad sense, but also as who you are as this expression, as this unique individual snowflake, I guess, you know, of you. So a true awakening lets Kate be Kate on all levels. And if Kate's moving towards this, and if Kate's moving towards that, then this is about allowing that river of life to flow,
Yeah,
allowing that movement to happen, and not standing in the way. So it's not that we want to eliminate her and get rid of her and make her bad. And this is, I think, maybe in my last video of the self concept, I maybe should have made that a bit clearer, because I did want to make it clear that it's not that our self concept's an obstacle to anything. It's just that when we broaden the self concept to include more, and to not limit ourselves just to that, that there's greater harmony that results, because that's actually the real nature of things, is that we are one. We are actually part of all of this. So to express that and consciously, it's a very healthy thing, and it will feel very healthy to do that.
Yeah, I definitely get that, and there's sort of this fractal element to it too, because it's like as you're as this is an internal process of unfolding here, it's sort of metaphorically reflective of the societal. It's going through the same things, right? We're
Right.
all kind of going through this sort of awakening, and the reason there is so much turmoil now in a specific way, it's almost as if we're at this place of we're kind of poking the boundary of poking our own boundaries. Like, okay, where is the boundary, right?
Right.
So that's what's happening on an internal level, and then reflective into the outside world. We're seeing our nations and our governments crumble apart, and things that we thought were so institutional and foundational. Money, banks are falling apart.
Hmm.
Everything is just sort of got
Hmm.
this jelly kind of quality to it, and it's perfectly
Right.
reflective what's happening in here.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. And all that to say, I don't subscribe to the whole AI is, we're not some sort of machine waking up to simulation. The simulation precedes AI. It just is forever. It's just infinite mind forever, you know. And I would say that AI is sort of like a metaphoric reflection of that, like this fractal element, holographic element of that.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, like divinity is like it's just conscious. It just is. It just has always been and never
Hmm.
didn't exist. It's just imagination forever. And then we get into I used to be so into multiverse theory and way down the rabbit hole of the neutrinos and quantum mechanics, and the more I really started to look at it, I thought, God, even for an all-powerful, all-knowing consciousness, what an awful waste of data, you know? It's just a tremendous amount of data for no reason. It's really just a model for infinite imagination. It's infinite. What if? Why don't we try this? What happens when we combine this and this? It's just infinite
Yeah.
then. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I
There's
mean, there could be what I sense when I hear you speaking is this uncontrollable expansion, right? So
yeah,
what happens if there's uncontrollable conscious expansion? What happens when this awakeness that we are decides on expansion, right? So
yeah,
when unconsciousness, when that which is still unconscious decides to expand, we start to see some problems, don't we?
yeah,
We start to see some problems. But when that which recognizes that it is life itself, when that recognizes its true nature, and then that decides on expansion, because it could take, it's kind of like, I liken it to like a chrysalis. It takes some time for this consciousness to be even ready for embodiment, or to even want embodiment, or to even uh, have that impulse towards life creation again. And the reason it does that is because it's coming out in a very new frequency. It's coming out in a conscious frequency. It's not doing it's like you said, it's not reacting anymore.
yeah,
It's not really reacting to things. It's coming out because it affirms reality. It's coming out because it sees divinity, and not in the spiritual sense, but in the sense of like, this is everything that every little pebble, every little grain of sand that I stand on is sanctified by being. I mean, the gentleness and the sensitivity and the love behind a being like that. I mean, that's what you are. That's
yeah.
what we all are. And for that to flower, like,
Like, wow,
mm-hmm.
which is so just mind blowing,
I know.
mind blowing, and it's going to do it forever. It's going to bloom
Yes.
forever.
Yes.
and just something breathtaking every time, just
Yes.
completely mesmerizing and
Yes. Well,
breathtaking.
because it's eternal. It's
Yeah,
eternal. It has no start or finish. And so we see that in nature and that which has not been modified by thought.
yeah,
That's where we're drawn. A lot of people on this path, we get drawn to animals and plants and things that are more harmonious in their nature.
yeah, yeah.
Music or creative even in nature.
Yeah, I feel it most. I feel most with nature, and when I'm in doing music, I'm just kind of lost in it. I get into that
Hmm.
flow state, and I'm just like, I don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
So you're a writer too. I know. I'm sure it was the same for you when you're writing your book. You just kind of like start, and then all of a sudden, 36 pages goes by, and you're like, where did that even come from? Like, I don't even know what happened. That just kind of flows out of me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did it come from?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a long period of time where there just was nothing really coming to. And then that was a whole personal dilemma because the Kate was so used to that identity as a writer
Yeah.
and that payoff of being a writer and having
Right.
that moment of I did a good job and that was beautiful and that was wonderful and cool and creative, but there had to be a kind of also a reorientation in those deep attachments to those things because when the one thing that you've built your whole life around just kind of dries up and stops and isn't really flowing. And again, this goes back to that chrysalysis where sometimes things they're composting for a reason. They're composting because they're transforming, they're alchemizing into something of a different quality.
Yeah.
Of they're becoming very conscious of themselves, so they're not going to move at the same speed and at the same rate anymore.
Yeah. Yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah.
Totally. Totally. I had the same experience writing my book. The first book I wrote in like a year and a half. I say I wrote, but it
Hmm.
came out. And then the second book, like 12 years into it. And every time I would get partially through, I would get on a riff of writing, and then I would just be reminded, like, who the hell am I writing this book for? There's no one for me to write. No one exists for me to read this book to, to let alone appreciate it. It's all just me, just having allowing thoughts to come
And
through.
there was still a pull, there was
There's
this pull,
still
this
this pull.
invitation, yeah, to show up and to be there.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
all of life is happening like that. That's why this whole letting go of control thing, it's really just a unnecessary part of this discussion because it all everything that which is meant to be happening is already happening and
yeah,
nothing needs to be taken from it or added to it. I may not like the fact that I'm not writing right now, but
it'll change.
yeah, but it like everything.
Yeah, like everything. Yeah. It happens in music. I can go months without writing a song, and then all of a sudden it's like six in one month.
Isn't that funny?
It's just strange.
Yeah, it is.
And I've learned over the years not to guilt myself over it. If I'm not
Sure.
feeling it, I just go for a hike.
That's
I
awesome.
spend time
Yeah.
with my dogs. I'm like, don't
Yeah.
worry, it'll
That's
work. And
a lot of people have huge inner conflict with that, especially I feel like if your career is deeply like involved in that and there's that pressure there. I found myself, I did a lot of like sales writing for a long time, which is very technical writing, copywriting, and I liked it because it was like kept things going for me, and it kept the energy there because I had to do it because I had to pay my bills. Um, but I liked that I still had some semblance of something happening that was familiar and could keep things going because it's at certain points, I mean, you can just really get stuck in that cocoon and it can go on for a long time.
yeah, and then all your friends are doing it, and then you just think that this is how life is. This is just what life is. And then you start to go, what are we doing? It's like the whole world's gone mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then it could be resentment. Oh, the government. We start to take it out on governments, and we start to take it out on all
Yeah,
the different
projecting
projecting
out.
out,
Mhm.
right? Blaming everybody in the world except for just going, no, this is just trying to get my attention to realize it's all in me. It's all inside me. It's very, very, It's so insidious, the way that the dual aspects pull on each other. It's just crazy
I know.
how how well it's done. The
It's
smoke
brilliant.
the smoke and mirrors trick, it's
Yeah.
so perfect no one would ever believe you unless they start doing it.
Yeah.
I have a
I want to.
friend. Go
Yeah, go
ahead.
ahead.
No,
No,
you
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, I have a friend is like he's a big tripper and he's totally into all this, but even for years I'd be like it doesn't exist. None of it's just all just pointless. And I would just have these long things, and it just took years to get to that place of just like, okay, the statistical improbability of what just happened is so astronomical. And then another synchronicity would happen the next day like that. And then another synchronicity and until it's just so many synchronicities. There's no other way to explain it other than something mysterious and magical and amazingly brilliant is
Yeah,
going on.
chaotic order.
Chaotic horror.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. with,
Really.
with, with some sort of like intelligence behind it. It just definitely seems,
It appears so, yes.
yeah, it definitely appears so. It appears so. And from all of my numerous encounters with it through psychedelics, there's obviously levels of where it's meshing together. There's this integration place. It feels like of you can get to this place which is not earth, but it's not nothingness either, but there is this area of like a playland, I would think.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know
and it's you
the,
you
the
are that
dreamland.
you are that transcendent function between the two. Who you
Yeah,
are is that transcendent function. So when we're too stuck in the nothing, we're rejecting the everything. When we're too stuck in the everything, we're rejecting the nothing,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
so the integration of the two is really the goal of non-duality.
yeah.
If it had a goal, which it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't, but I had an experience recently where I felt like it was showing me. I used to think that there was no goal to it, but up until this point, it was showing me what was possible and what was possible. Sorry, my dog is just trying to let me know he's hungry.
Oh, that's okay.
He's like, it's 6:30, 7:30. I haven't eaten yet.
Is he like knocking on your door?
He's pulling up I don't know, I have like these throw rugs everywhere. So he's like pulling all the rugs up to be like, I exist and I haven't eaten for at least an hour. The way they get their attention. The way they get their attention. I don't remember what I was saying, but hey, that's all. It doesn't matter. I think we
Oh,
kind of.
that you didn't think there was a goal to it until.
Oh yeah, and recently I started to see that I don't want to say there's a problem, but what we're learning how to do is play with reality and not get caught in it.
Mhm.
We can
That's a good way to put
play
it.
and
Mhm.
pull ourselves out at will, and and and. And I don't want to sit here and feel like I'm promoting psychedelics because I'm not, but it's a huge part of my gnosis, and I notice on these journeys, I'm getting better the more that I get comfortable with it, um, to go into these really bizarre places, but pull myself out. And the effect that's happening to me in my normal life is the lucid dreaming in my life has gone up significantly. Like I'm having lucid dreams at least once a week now, where that was like a very rare occurrence when it happened before. And now I have these moments where I'm like, did that happen? I'm not really sure if that happened or not. I can't determine if that
So
was a
the
memory.
worlds are melting into themselves.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Which says to me there's lots of very, very cool potential in there somewhere.
Oh,
You
there
know?
is. That's a whole nother level of discussion.
Yeah. well, I feel like I've already taken up so much of your time. We've been
Oh,
on
it's
here
all
for an
right. No,
hour. You're
this is
you're
fun.
amazing. But I started recording and I didn't like give you a proper introduction, and I want to be able to like help you plug whatever you can plug, you know? And I don't know if there's anything that you want me to say that would help you out. And I'll do like a proper introduction and then I'll spice it all together.
Yeah, I mean, everything's on spiritualshifts.com.
Spiritual
So
shifts, just go there.
yeah,
There's books, there's classes, there's all that kind of stuff. And
there's no classes. There's really just kind of bunch of blogs and the navigation on the site with the blogging. It's just, I've been blogging on there for years, but the
uh
navigation's not so great. So sometimes what I tell people to do is just go to the search function and type something you're interested in and see if it'll pull up any of the blogs on that topic.
okay,
Because
gotcha.
there's so years of just blogging on there, but the search function I think is very useful.
Oh
But
wow. I'll
but
have
yeah,
to check that out more. Yeah.
check it out. The blogs are really just, again, the writing's not happening now, so what can I do? It's just, it'll happen when it happens, but there's quite a big body of work there to work through, and then some poetry books, which is really just the love of my life. It's my music.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Any particular poetry? Old, new, French, English?
uh, I
Any
I
favorites?
I really like, I for a long time I did a lot of surrealist poetry.
Oh
Because I
yeah.
was kind of like you, I was getting pulled into all kinds of visions and imagery, and it was pretty potent. And then that stopped. It stopped for a while, and then this new book is really just kind of a song of nature, and kind of how healing nature can be for these thoughts, that are so frantic and so heavy sometimes, and how when we go out into our plants and into our little animal friends, and we go there, and we spend time in these places, just something comes alive, something begins to bloom in us, something balances and harmonizes. So that's really where that second book kind of came from. And I was, for a long time, I was like, damn it, like all the surrealist stuff's gone. What the hell, But it is what it is. It just has its own way of being.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird. I used to be a tripping fanatic and I used to be so down, the more bizarre the better was the crazier my
Yeah,
thing.
same.
And
Yeah.
then I went 10 years of just not tripping. Just one day I was like, okay, I'm done. And I didn't do it for 10 years. And then all of a sudden it just kind of showed up in my life again. I was like, ah, all right.
Hmm.
And it was so funny
Nice.
because as soon as I did, the first voice that came to me was, welcome home. And you don't have to take so long
Oh,
between breaks.
wow.
You can come visit
Yeah.
home more often. And I was
Yeah.
just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. I guess
Yeah.
because I'm old doesn't mean I don't have to do that anymore, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to recognize all these different parts of us, and to see that they do have really unique individual personalities and expressions, the artist part, the musician part, the teacher part, the all these unique individual aspects of us, looking to come home, looking for our embrace, looking for just recognition.
Our sense of community that we're not crazy.
Yes. Well, yeah. Well,
Mhm.
that's a whole nother thing, like, what about the part of you that is crazy? Can we let that part in?
Mm,
Can we
yeah,
bring that part into the part that that is totally psychotic,
it
because what we're
is.
seeing in the world, we all have in ourselves. It's not that it's out there, it's all here. So what happens when these parts, when we come in touch with them? How do they behave? How do they want to integrate? Are we still afraid of them?
I
What
say
a
insanity and insanity are two sides of the same coin.
sanity and insanity.
Yeah, right? They're the same thing. It's really a matter of perspective, right? If they expect me to fit into the
Sure.
world, then I have to act insane.
Yeah.
But if I want to be rational, I have to act insane from
Yeah.
the material world.
Yeah.
It's such a perfect duality. It's hysterical. I can
Yeah. And
almost
that's,
feel the comic joke in that.
yeah, that's why this awakeness and this deep recognition of being becomes so integral to the evolution of our society. It's not just some individual thing, some personal thing that I go lock off in an ashram or a cave and go do that. I don't think that's the kind of awakening we're living right now. I
No,
think
no.
we'd be naive to think that it wasn't part of a greater expression of a very integral movement of the planet at large.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, you don't have to go to, you don't have to move to India. You don't have to move to an ashram. You could just sit in your living room and just start confronting these things. It's just a matter of turning off Netflix and really
Yeah,
just say, who am I?
totally.
And then answer that question for an hour.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
that is going to have way more of an impact than a $5,000 trip to India.
And how simple is that?
Right? It's so
Yeah,
easy. It's so
right.
easy. Well, I'll leave you with a surrealist joke.
Okay.
How many surrealists does it take to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know how many.
A fish.
I could have guessed that one.
Kate, you're amazing. This is the absolute best conversation ever. I
We
love it
had fun, huh?
when I grow so much, and it's just been awesome. And I can't thank you enough. And I
Oh,
really, really hope that you'll come back and do this again with
oh,
me
let's do it
sometime.
again. Yeah, let's do it
Yeah,
again.
I would love
Yeah,
that. I would love that.
we know how to have a good time, so at least we know that.
Yeah, no
I like
doubt.
it.
No
Yeah.
doubt. We'll get into the weird, we'll get into the really crazy stuff next
Yeah, I
time.
could see you and I getting into some weird things for sure.
Oh, no, that's even better. Awesome. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, you have a beautiful evening and thank you
Oh,
again.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
actually it started thundering right at the end of our call, and I was like, "Oh gosh, is the internet going to go out cuz it's been going out with the rains." So I'm glad it didn't.
Well, good thing you held your balance and you stayed off the rain by keeping perfectly centered. You kept
I
it off.
know, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. Now you can just relax and just let it rain.
Mhm. We needed it bad.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's been raining cats and dogs here for the last couple of days, so
Great.
yeah. I'm,
Love
it's,
it.
I'm in the deep south. It's a little different here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, I bet your puppy's ready for her for his
For
dinner.
his, yeah, he's like, I
Yeah.
need chicken. Time to eat. All right. But thanks again. I really appreciate it.
You're
And I will
very
see you
welcome.
soon. And
Yeah, see you
please,
soon.
please, if you're not watching Spiritual Shifts, please go on YouTube because you will be an addict. I promise you, just watch one full video and it's going to just come up again and again and again. You're just going to be like, oh my God, this chick is
Oh.
so spot on. So spot
Thank you.
on.
Thanks so much, everybody. Mwah.
Yes.
Love
Thank
to
you very
all. Peace to
much.
all.
All right. All right. I'll
Yeah.
talk to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye
Bye bye.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.